Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all? I hope that you are well, and I hope that whatever you're doing and wherever you are at the moment, that life is a little bit easier than before. And I know for sure that these are extremely testing times for all of us. But one thing that we must always do, as I always say, and I truly believe this with hand on heart, is that we mustn't lose faith. And ultimately, we mustn't lose faith in ourselves. Sometimes, when we are amongst people, and it may be family or friends or colleagues, whoever it is, it's very difficult to remain oneself. And I know for myself as well through the years, one of the most important things that I found that granted me peace and still grants me peace in my life is to have the courage to stand up for what you believe in. Even if the whole world is saying to you, you know what, that's not the sun. But if you feel that is the sun, keep that in your heart. Because without that total and absolute trust in ourselves, we can be swayed this way and that way. And it is a very long journey called life in some respects. And yet in others, it's so short. And it really matters who we spend our time with. So let us try to spend our time with people who vibrate and resonate with our essence and who bring something to our life. And obviously, in return, we will bring something good to their life. Now, today, I am really, really happy because I am welcoming back my guest who I've had on the show before, and it's the rather lovely and wonderful Caroline Gaskin. Now, Caroline is one of the UK's leading homeopaths. She is a health writer and wellness coach who provides natural medicine solutions for many conditions, which are especially needed in these times. And since the last episode where I had Caroline on, which was an amazing episode, I have to say, it was Caroline, I call her my oracle because she knows so many things, and I can ask her anything and she'll say, well, do this, 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 or you can find it there. So it's one of those people who are really important, I think, to have in life. And I have had such a good response from the listeners. Thank you so much for getting in contact. And one of the things that kept coming back up over and over again is that you wanted her back on the show because although Caroline talks about homeopathy, she talks about so many other things, in life and gives different sort of advices and things. So I have listened to you all and brought her back again because Caroline is a fountain of knowledge, and she has worked as a homeopath and a flower essence prescriber and a health coach for over 20 years in her London-based practice, and has more recently added the online consultations for her clients, which are worldwide. Now, she also teaches at the UK's leading homeopathy colleges and supervises students and practitioners. Caroline welcomes all sorts of clients of all ages and has a clinic at Triyoga, which is in Camden in London, and at Ainsworths Homeopathic Pharmacy in London, who are actually the Royal Warrants, who hold the Royal Warrants of Appointment to Her Majesty the Queen and His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, because he also is an avid believer in homeopathy. Now, Caroline teaches, and she has so much wisdom and knowledge that I would like really her to impart on you today. There is so much that we can learn from experts, and there are so many experts out there, but really I believe that Caroline is one of those really natural healers that has so much time and care for others. Recently, Caroline has been published in a book called New Hot, Taking on the Menopause with Attitude and Style. And it's been written by Meg Matthews. She actually contributed 2 chapters to the book, which has already sold out on Amazon. It's been a phenomenal success. Not only that, she is also writing her own book, which is called Bird is the Word, and it's about bird watching and mental wellness. But it's so much more. It's so much more. It's not just about that. And that book is hopefully coming out early next year. So without further ado, the pleasure really is all mine. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you so much. That's such a lovely introduction. And, it's always great to be in your company, really is.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. That's so kind of you, really.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute joy to have you and always to talk to you because, as I said, you are such a knowledgeable lady. And I could ask you loads of things. I think I'm going to write a little book and then just write little things down. And then each time that we speak, I'm going to ask you them because it's so important, isn't it, in these times to have somebody that really cares about people's health.
It totally is. And I think that's something that we've all been feeling a little bit adrift with in terms of perhaps where we usually go to for our resources. And I found that amongst clients. And would you say that's common, in friends of yours as well?
Yes, I would. This is a very sensitive subject, actually, because I have been listening to my clients also, and I've been listening to friends. And one of the main things that people at the moment are feeling in general is abandoned.
Yes.
And whether that be, without going into politics, whether that be from, the powers that be, whether that be from their own circle of friends and family to health practitioners, to the alternative health practitioner, whoever it may be, people feel disillusioned. And this is why it was so important for you to come back on again. They need some guidance. They need help. People need somebody who really genuinely cares about their well-being in the true sense. Caroline, in the olden days, they said that in China, I'm talking of maybe 200-300 years ago, they used to pay the practitioners while they were well. When they became ill is when they stopped paying because clearly they weren't doing their job. So I don't like to say that it's all about the money.
Yes. Yeah.
But sadly, this is what's been the feedback for me, that there's nobody out there, or it's very rare.
Yes. Yeah. I've certainly been encouraging colleagues, the students that come to me for supervision it's part of my practice anyway, to communicate with the people that come to see you and not always to necessarily be looking too far beyond that, because if you build a good relationship with those people that do come to you, that are in your space, and you give information, refer to maybe some studies as well, refer to, you might be talking about supplements, you might be talking about a particular condition and looking at what can support that, so it can be topical. I might be, at the moment I'm talking about immune support for this winter. What can we do to look after ourselves? What can we do to encourage our immune systems to function efficiently, so that when we meet virus and bacteria, or a challenge of any sort in our life, then we have the tools to respond, and we are well equipped to respond. Because it's, when it comes down to it, it's all information. A virus or a bacteria comes along, and it's a piece of information, and it's about how we respond to that. And are we robust in ourselves? If we're feeling defeated, abandoned, downtrodden, then we are far more likely, and there's studies to show you this, we're far more likely to be susceptible to something when it does come along. And And that's of concern, so not only are we entering into the autumn winter season, but how are we entering into that compared to last year? What's our equipment? We're in a very different setting now, 6 months into, this whole conversation, than we were last year at this time, when we were just entering into another autumn winter. And there's so much doubt about what might be ahead. None of us know. It feels like, and yet we're not really looking at how it actually is for us. How is it for us today when we walk out? What are our issues? Is there something there that can support us? And, I'm finding that people are coming into the space, the one-to-one space with me, and often bringing so much more. I might be the only person that they can talk to about how they're really feeling, that their group of people that they can talk to in a frank way has diminished. I would say that's very true for a lot of people. So there's more being brought to the table, I think, for the complementary practitioner. And an interesting fact that a colleague of mine told me is that the searches for, he'd been doing some work, he's also a homeopath, doing some work around Google searches for homeopathy. So I can't speak for complementary therapy as a whole because I haven't done these searches myself, but he said searches for homeopathy went up by 200% during this period of time. And searches for homeopaths near me went up 22% during this time. So what industry is right now saying it has an increase in searches for it on Google, an increase in interest in it, because people are feeling that, knowing that there isn't anybody to go to, that the doctor hasn't been available for a long period of time. People are withholding themselves with serious conditions from going into that space because they're frightened, or in a very English way, this is very particular to English people, I think, we don't want to take somebody else's place, which is potentially more needful than us. So many people are saying, oh, no, it's fine. I don't know. I won't go in because somebody else might need my place. No, you first. And I think that's a particularly English conversation. I can't speak as an Italian. I wish I could.
It's very true. It's very true.
And I think people are bringing, are bringing more to that space. And in a way wanting more from that space and feeling bewildered. I've been doing throughout this. So earlier on in the year, I did a first aid course for particularly for mums in my practice. So it was online in Zoom, very traditionally quite difficult to get mums who are interested in learning more about health for their family, homeopathy for their family. Difficult to get everybody together in a real place and time on a particular day because we have so many commitments, so the Zoom space, and the fact that people were furloughed and people were at home, suddenly we could do this course. And it was really interesting being in that space and seeing what people wanted and actually hearing how empowered people were through having, I think it was all women actually, how empowered everybody was from that space and able to then go and with more confidence help a child who was teething or had a fever or a cold. And I just love watching those ripples go out, from that space. And 2 people from that space have said, I want to go on and study homeopathy, which is absolutely fantastic,
It is absolutely amazing, really. When you think about it, it's sort of awakened something within them.
Absolutely. And your podcast, is Aspire You, and there is this, it was like, wow, people are feeling inspired and wanting to do something more with this. And in fact, that's what you said from the first podcast, that people, what kind of questions were people asking? Was there anything sort of specific that people picked up on that they wanted to know more about?
Yes, there were so many things, actually. I've had a lot of women contact me. And one of the biggest things I've had, I'll give you a little list. So yes, there's a little list going on here that I've prepared, and it's incredible, really, Caroline, how so many people have so many of the same issues and the same worries. And I've put it all together for you. So one of the main things that women were saying to me is about how these, really since February, March this year, when all of this began, one of the main things that has really played a part in their stress is that it's affected their hormones. Mm-hmm. And, for example, their periods have been all over the place. Mm-hmm. Their emotions have been all over the place. And things that they had considered okay in life have suddenly become totally exaggerated. So there's no real balance and equilibrium in that. Mm-hmm. And they were asking what they can do, for example, why this is happening, because it's very scary for them. Fear was playing a large part in a lot of the questions. You know, what if I can't get to the doctor? What if I can't see the people that I usually see, like the massage people, the reflexologists, whatever? What if I can't get an appointment with the optician? What if I can't do this? What can I do if I don't feel well? You know, it's total panic. And also about immune issues. For example, what can we do to protect ourselves and take that power of our health back into our own hands? These are the three really important points, as well as the stress and the fear and how to deal with that, you know, and all these symptoms that suddenly were arising that they had thought were dormant for years, you know, whether that be anxiety or hormonal or whatever, it suddenly seemed to come up again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think first off is good to understand what happens under stress. You know, so the body responds in a certain way to a stressor, and that stressor could be the news from the box in the corner of the room, or it could be an environmental, you know, toxin or a potential allergen to us, or it could be a pathogen, you know, virus or bacteria. And basically we put into place certain mechanisms to deal with those. And there are some things which are commonalities, you know, so when we meet a stressor, we start to pump out. Part of the process is pumping out chemicals from the adrenal cortex. So the adrenals are two little organs that, when you look at a biology drawing, I don't think anyone mentioned adrenals when I was looking at biological stuff. I don't, you know, when I started homeopathy, which was 25 years ago, I think. Started in 1996. Although I'd done a short course in 94, and then I started studying properly on what we call a licentiate in 1996. And I don't think the adrenal glands or the thyroid were just ever mentioned. And so we knew where the kidneys were, and basically you have, if you're lucky, most of us have one friend. I have a few friends who only have one kidney. Usually we have two kidneys, and they sit on the back of our waist, and so they're in what we call the small of our back, in the back of our waist. And on top of those, when you look at the biological drawings, there's this little kind of hat that's draped over the top, and that's the adrenal glands, and they're quite tiny. The lungs, which, you know, control our breath, obviously, and that is like a pump inside our chest, and we have these two big lungs that grow to their full capacity during the years of 7 to 14. Yeah, so the lungs grow to certain capacity in our youth until we're 7, and then 7 to 14 they grow to their full capacity. Our spine from our neck to the back of our waist grows in length, and we grow taller. And for women, we might stop growing around the age of sort of 13, 14, and periods start, and we often don't grow much in height beyond that age. We might grow a bit, And that actually can cause us some issues if we grow in height beyond our period starting. I'll come back to that in a minute, because it's a little bit sort of it's a specialized situation, really.
Mm-hmm.
And then we grow taller in that part of the body, and the lungs fill the thorax fully, and they anchor right into your clavicle, your collarbone, so right up near the base of your throat. And they anchor in there and in the tops of your shoulders, and then the bottom, they anchor into this kidney adrenal gland area. And an interesting fact that I only learned recently is that the vast majority of our lung tissue is on the back of our body, and so we think
Really?
Exactly. We think of our breath, as filling from the front, and there is space in the front that we fill, but a lot of tissue is on the back. And actually a lot of pathology, lung pathology, and by that I mean, lumps and bumps and tumors and maybe worse, cancers, tend to be in the back of the lungs. And what that shows us is that we're not using the back of our lungs efficiently. So
My goodness.
Exactly. So a key to dealing with stress is actually learning to deal better, but it's to breathe better. But I'll come on to that in a little bit. But basically, if we think about the lungs, going to the top of up there under the clavicle, in our collarbones, and then anchoring into our adrenal glands, kidney area, and we go into shock or trauma. And if any of you listening want to do this, and you just go, and your lungs jump up. And if they stay jumped up in that place where you shallow breathe,
I just did that,
exactly,
silently.
and then you go, that's what you do
Yeah.
when you're frightened or you're tense, because you're pumping oxygen in quickly and you're oxygenating yourself fast, because when you are oxygenated fast like that, you think faster. The oxygen goes into the cells. You think faster to get away from that flight or fight situation. Now, that shock could be an emotional shock. It could be a big bang next to you. It could be a physical trauma to you. It could be something that you live through, like a traumatic experience. And we've had waves of that, particularly since we hear everything that's going on in the world. We feel the drama of tsunamis. We feel the drama of earthquakes, volcanoes going off, etc. And so the way that the body operates is to go into this upper lung going, and the diaphragm, this big thick band across the bottom of our lungs, tends to get stuck up in that space. And so what happens is the lungs kind of pull on the kidneys and the adrenals. So some people urinate frequently when they're frightened, and that's because the kidneys are literally being pulled on. We might go into this tense state of pumping out, cortisol from those adrenals to deal with the aggressor. But we can get stuck in that state if the breath and it doesn't return to normal, and we don't return to a kind of normal balanced place. And we're so used, and this has been going on for the last 6 months, we're so used to being constantly triggered that we are in this space of, fright, flight, panic disorder is going on. And what that means, Chinese medicine, we have kidneys, adrenals, ovaries, and gonads are all on what we call the same meridian, the same kind of energy line in the body. And this is Chinese medicine. But the kidneys, adrenals, ovaries, and gonads, testes, are all the same area of the body. They're all related organs. And fear and anxiety affect those organs. And I've just explained, part of how they get affected. And when our energy is in that adrenal space of dealing with stressors, we just put the ovaries and the gonads on the back burner. We're just like, sorry, you got to wait while I deal with this stress. And kind of in an easy to understand nutshell, that's why our periods go wonky in stressful times. And it's not uncommon in stress for women's
So let
periods.
me understand this. So, and I understand the principles of the meridians in the body, but for people out there, Caroline, explain a little bit about, I mean, I know it's a whole vast subject, but about these meridians and how each meridian corresponds to a part of the body or an organ of the body.
Organ, yeah. First of all, I'll say I'm not a Chinese medicine practitioner. So beyond what I say, go and find out if it interests you.
Yeah.
Go and see an acupuncturist, a Chinese medicine practitioner. They use a whole kind of a whole load of approaches. It's not just acupuncture and it's not just herbs, but it's a whole way of looking at the human body, and organs are paired in their action, and they have, so you might go to a Chinese practitioner and they say, oh, it's all about the liver with you, or it's all about the spleen, or it's all about the kidneys, and or it may be heart, for instance. So they will be looking at which organ is shouting loudest, and they will be working in areas of the body that relate to that organ. And those areas of the body are on what we call meridians. So a little bit like, any of you who've looked at astrology, I think of it as being like, astronomy. And you look at stars in the sky, and then they're joined up to make, those astrological figures. So we see, what's the Orion. I always the one I always see, and the meridians are a little bit like joining up those dots, of the stars, and the meridians join up points on the body that we can access through acupressure or acupuncture, and we might be working on somewhere around your ankle, for instance, that actually heals and balances the kidneys in their action. A lot of that explains meridians, but I'm not a Chinese medicine practitioner, but I use it as a really great point of reference. So, for instance, each organ in the body has times of the day when it is particularly active and times of the day when it should be resting. Each organ in the body has an expression an emotional expression. And it also has emotions or situations that affect it. So kidneys, adrenals, ovaries, gonads, for instance, are particularly affected by fear and anxiety. So you can expect, in a state of prolonged fear and anxiety, for those organs to start to play up. So yes, period problems arise out of that. And to give a completely different example, lungs are affected by grief. So we often talk about lungs as housing grief. And somebody who comes in to see me who's sad will often talk about stuff, and they might sigh loudly. So it's like they've been holding on, and then they're like, or they might pop down their bags and sigh as they sit down into their chair. And I'm like, okay, what's going on in the lungs? What are you holding on to in terms of grief? And what kind of emotional baggage do you need to put down and just let go of, basically?
So, Caroline, yes, thank you for that. It's so interesting, And so, for example, I've had, as I said to you, lots of ladies, contact me about this. If you're going to treat one specific area, because I know a friend of mine, she's always going to the toilet, she has to have a wee. Anything that happens, she has to go for a wee. It's like, she can't deal with it. It immediately hits that point. And then we used to travel a lot together. And as soon as there was a stressful thing, she'd have to go to the toilet all the time, like 10 times in an hour. So my question is, I suppose, when you're dealing with women and their hormones and stress and the issues, especially with what's going on in the world, and as you said, this constant bombardment, would you firstly have to deal with all the organs on that meridian line, strengthen them? Is that how it works?
Could be, yeah. So let's just take your friend who always needs the loo in for a pee, stressful situation. Ultimately, she needs to learn to breathe more efficiently. And when she breathes more efficiently and does less panicky breath, then the kidneys are less stressed. and she wouldn't need to pee so much. So there's this relationship between organs, and there's a very physical relationship between the action of the lungs and the effect on the kidneys. And so other things that, for instance, if you are stressed, that you could do and would really serve you would be more grounding practices. So making sure, I mean, an absolute one I love that I so rarely get time to do myself, or make time. Let's not get time, let's make time to do myself.
Absolutely, yes.
Is the time in the day when the kidneys would love it if you just took a little time out of your day is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If you could lie down at 3 in the afternoon for 15 minutes and not look at your phone and just relax, maybe send some cute WhatsApp messages to friends that you know you'd really like to chat to. Definitely does work. You know, if we all just relax for 15 minutes at that time of the day, that would go a long way to restoring some kidney energy. And if we walked in the park barefoot, if we spent time outside in nature, you know, digitally detoxing is important. I mean, that's why I'm writing the book, Bird is the Word, because it's all about how bird watching became very, well, it comes from springboard, is that bird watching became really important for me during menopause, when all the other things that I did to ground myself, like yoga and meditation, just weren't working for me anymore. And I got into bird watching because I would immerse in the natural world and just lose all that worry, agitation, inability to deeply relax just through being in that space with the birds. So I found something that allowed me to deeply ground and reconnect to the earth, reconnect to our mineral source. You know, we are of the earth, and a lot of what we do, a lot of this information that's flying around detaches us from the earth. We're also not very, to talk about it on a physical level, we're not very well minerally resourced these days. So the food that we eat is very minerally deficient, even if it's organic. It has nothing like the minerals in it that the food had in the 1930s. So you know, there are some statistics that I use because I kind of remember them easily.
Yes.
But you know, if we look at the statistics of, and I'm not saying you all need to go out and eat meat at all, but if we look at the statistics of the minerals that meat has in it now compared to what it had in it in 1930s, it's as much as 60% deficient. So where are we getting those minerals from? And the answer is we're not getting those minerals. And when we don't have those minerals in our system, we become ungrounded. We become disconnected from the earth. You know, the earth is rich in minerals. We become disconnected from it if we're not, you know, if we don't have a mineral rich state. So you know, grounding practices help us draw up minerals from the earth. You know, a practice, this is one that's really old school that I love, and virtually anybody can do this. So it's difficult in a podcast situation to be too prescriptive, but if you can get hold of some Epsom salts, you know, and do your research online as to where to get them at the lowest cost, because Epsom salts are Epsom salts. Don't get the garden ones from the garden centre. Go and buy them that, you know, humans can use to bathe.
Okay.
I'll just say that. But
And what do they do, the Epsom salts, Caroline?
Are fantastic. So you want to put them in the bath. You want to be using 1 kilo of Epsom salts a week. So whether you have 1 bath in 1 kilo or 4 baths in 250 grams, you know, you might need to do your maths. You can't really overdose on it. It's not, you know, if you sort of suddenly found you were using 1.5 kilos a week, you know, it's nothing really is going to happen. It's we really need, you know, 80% of us at least, and this is an old statistic, are deficient in magnesium. So what the Epsom salts are is magnesium sulfate. And when we bathe in an Epsom salt solution, we absorb that magnesium really well through the skin. We actually absorb it so well through the skin compared to taking it orally. Many clients are taking oral supplements as pills. powder, and they are not absorbing it well. We absorb it well through the skin. And there's a couple of sprays that we can use. We can use a magnesium spray oil. And basically what happens when you get magnesium into your system is it helps you draw up calcium, potassium, and phosphorus. It helps women in particular balance their blood sugar. And when the blood sugar is balanced, we feel safe and we make progesterone, which is our feel-good hormone. So many of us at the moment are feeling unsafe, feeling anxious. Get into an Epsom salt bath with 250, 500 grams of Epsom salts. Bathe for 20 minutes.
And how many times a week, Caroline?
Well, you want to think about using a kilo of Epsom salts a week.
And what about if you haven't got a bath, for people who don't have a bath?
Question. Yes, I have a friend who bought a huge kind of plastic tub and puts it in the bottom of her shower. So she has a kind of what you call a hip bath. But you can make a foot bath up. So you could do a 20-minute foot bath. So you just got a washing up bowl with a nice strong solution.
Would that work as well?
Yeah, great. I get elderly clients to do it. I get clients who don't have a bath to do it. Yeah, absolutely. Really nice. And so that will allow you to draw up minerals that make strong bones, calcium and phosphorus, water.
So a kilo a week.
Yeah, kilo a week of Epsom.
Maybe what, twice a week?
Yeah. So if you'd had it twice a week, you'd be using 500 grams. Twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what, in warm water if you haven't got a bath, or if you have?
Yeah, warm water, lovely hot bath. And if you're menopause and you don't fancy a hot bath, it doesn't have to be a hot bath. It can be a cooler bath. You can do that at the beginning of the day. You can do it at the end of the day. Choose a time that suits you. If your sleep's affected, which it can be under stress, and you're finding it difficult to fall asleep, an Epsom salt bath in the evening can be really good. Do
people drink this stuff?
You can drink it as part of a particular cleanse, but I do not advise doing that. Really. Yeah. Please, if you want to do, it's called a liver gallbladder flush. If you want to do it, get some good advice from a naturopath as how to.
Yeah. Don't go out drinking Epsom salts. I've heard of people doing that and being quite sick from it, vomiting. So that's one of the things that I did have to mention, actually.
Totally, yeah. We do not drink them unless we're under guidance of a qualified naturopath. That's the best thing to say on air, because it's really important that we are safe. But bathing in Epsom salts is an old naturopathic practice, and it's brilliant to calm you down, and especially if you can't fall asleep. And the other thing that I absolutely love that I tell a lot of people to do is to brush your skin. Do you know about this?
Yes, I've heard about that, about brushing. But please, share it with us, because I've heard of the body brushing, and I've heard also of the dead sea salts and using that. But I'll let you tell us about it.
Actually, that's a really good point. So the magnesium sulfate or Epsom salts are very low cost, and that's also another reason why I like talking about them. They're very readily available, they're low cost, and in the UK we can get them for as low cost as £1 a kilo.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. So I give I think it's epsomsalts.co.uk.
Okay, that's handy to know.
That's the address, but you can find them for that cheap, and so you've kind of almost got no excuse.
Yes, yeah.
But you can buy magnesium chloride salts, which are good, much more expensive. And
what's the difference?
In a nutshell, not a lot. I'm not really sure. I haven't really seen anything that says you must take for this condition magnesium chloride. So I'd start with the Epsom salts. What I do think the Dead Sea salts and even the Himalayan salts can be very useful for in a bath, and that they also will help you draw up a lot of minerals, is if you've got itchy skin conditions. So if you've got, eczema, psoriasis, itchy skin conditions, a salt bath can be very soothing. And if you have those kind of things on a small area of your hand or your feet or your ankles, you can do a hand bath or a foot bath to bathe that particular part of you in a strong salt solution. And Dead Sea salts have gone out of vogue a little bit. Some people don't like to buy them. And that's a slightly more political thing. They are amazing. I'm not going to say it on air, but I cured my own eczema ultimately by bathing my hand every day in Dead Sea salts. And I had a terrible, it wasn't really an eczema, it was diagnosed as that, but it was actually a contact dermatitis. And my background, which we might have said on the last talk, was I was a fine artist. I was a textile fine artist. And we used to go and we'd be dyeing fabric. And so there was nothing to clean your hands with. We'd use bleach. So could we all recoil in shock? We didn't have gloves.
Yes. Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So there were some gloves. They sort of said, there's some gloves over there in the corner of the room that you can use. But they were all kind of stuck together with the dye from the printing screens. And then we'd get this horrid stuff on our hands that we would use if there wasn't a decent hand wash. And they weren't invented in those days. We'd use the stuff we cleaned the silk screens with. It's called Ceri Wash. Well, we stripped all the oils off our hands basically, so that then along come the chemicals and bam, they're straight in your system, and you've got a contact dermatitis. So I went to the doctor, had some cream, and which was a steroid cream, and it went away. But several years later, with complementary medicine, I started and homeopathy, that came out of my body. So I started to get the eczema back on my hand as it came, something that was within me. It got pushed within me by the steroid cream, came out, and my hands were really, really sore and rough. And that Dead Sea salt was just my savior. I mean, it just cleared up. It was amazing.
And how long did it take? I know it depends on the individual, but...
Yeah, initially it took me 20 minutes to get my hand in. They said bathe it for 20 minutes. I think a herbalist told me to do it. He was a lovely, lovely guy called Andrew Chevalier. And he said, I think it's chemical. I want you to bathe the cause of it. And I want you to bathe your hand in Dead Sea salts. And it would take me 20 minutes, because my hand was sore and raw, to actually get my hand in that salt solution. I mean, it was agony, but then I would get my hand out and it would feel completely blessed. And lo and behold, all the redness would just go. It was amazing.
Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable.
Absolutely.
It's such a simple remedy, and who would think? Is he the same man that wrote the book? Because the name is familiar.
Chevalier, he may have published. He was at the Healthy Living Centre when I first graduated.
Yeah.
Though I'd seen him many years before for this. I mean, many years before. And very traditional, what we call a medical herbalist. So using English herbs in the main, or European herbs. And he lived in Holt in Norfolk, and I don't know if he's still in practice, but he's a lovely, lovely man. And he would come down to London and work one day a week. But I saw him many years before. So I graduated in 2000, and it would have been 1987 that I went to see him.
Oh gosh,
no, a long time ago. So. Yeah, so the salts are amazing, and a Himalayan salt bath or Dead Sea salt bath will replenish all sorts of salts that your body is very good at absorbing through the skin. So,
and what else would you recommend, Caroline?
Skin brushing. We're just going to talk about. So
the skin brushing,
and it's fantastic. You use a natural bristle brush, and you use it dry. You don't use it in the shower. So before you get into the shower or before you get into the bath, you brush your skin as if you were reverse grooming a horse or a dog. You work from your extremities towards your heart. So you brush your hands towards your heart, your feet towards your heart, and you brush your whole body in long strokes. And you start. You want to, and it has to be a natural bristle, not synthetic, and not too hard. Not like the sort of thing you scrub the floor with. You can get a body brush from, in the UK.
They're a strange sensation, though, aren't they?
They are at first.
Yes, but as you get used to it, it gets easier.
It's gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I first started to do it when I had eczema. I think the same, he possibly told me to do this. I can't remember who told me this. And I used to call it legitimate scratching.
Yes, because that is not a funny situation, is it? It's like a sneaky scratch type of thing.
Absolutely. But you feel so invigorated from it. And do that every morning before a shower, and then shower, regular shower, wash, etc. And if you can finish with a cold shower, that is amazing. The coldest water you've got, it's amazing for you. And I can guarantee you will scream and shout about that for the first week. And then after that, you'll be like, can't wait.
Oh my goodness. That's for the brave. But there is that method, isn't there? Of using the cold water technique. Is it the Hof method?
Wim Hof, yeah. He says cold water immersion, which is great. But I mean, you need proper ice in the bath, and it needs to be really cold.
Yeah, that's for the brave-hearted, isn't it?
It is. I've done a bit of that.
Have you?
I certainly have friends who swim in the ponds on Hampstead Heath year round. Because it is very strengthening for your whole system, and you should find your immunity's boosted. So during menopause, so I'm the other side of menopause, and during menopause, I found out my thyroid was low, and I didn't want to take thyroxine, which is a synthetic thyroid.
So many people are now actually on that medication of all sorts of ages that I know, but there was a whole thing. I know that there's so many different thoughts on this, but that it's sort of called the thyroxine nation. But there are other ways to deal with this, aren't there?
There are. And you need to, if you're on thyroxine and you're listening, you do need support in coming off it and finding really great alternatives. It has to work. You need to do it very gently. And I'm just going to say that first of all. But if you know you have low thyroid and it's come up on your bloods, then you really do need to do something about it. If you know you're low thyroid, you're under-functioning thyroid symptoms, and you're thinking, I've got a low thyroid, you've been reading. And these would be things like being chilly, having a slow bowel usually, so erring towards constipation, being chilly, being your energy being very poor generally, having sudden crashes of energy where you're just like absolutely wiped out for a few days, and you think, blimey, what's going on? Falling hair.
This is one of the biggest things actually that I can really say that I hear a lot about with people is the thyroid. And one of the things that they complain about, Caroline, is that they don't find the tests so reliable.
True. Yeah. The best.
What is good for the thyroid? I know there's the hypo. Explain the different conditions.
Yeah, exactly. There's hypo, which is underfunctioning, and the vast majority of people who have thyroid problems suffer from an underfunctioning thyroid. And I'm going to run through a few things that affect the thyroid. But a few people suffer from an overfunctioning thyroid where it's just whirring away, and that's very different. So other things you get with a low thyroid would be dry skin, often a very dryness, and it might be you get patches of dry skin, particularly by the elbow, on the elbow or from the elbow towards the wrist. So that kind of below the elbow, if you like, and below the knee at the front. Those would be common places where people got dry skin in those places. I'd be like, the thyroid's a bit low. Odd sweating, where the hands are just sweating hugely, or the feet are, or sort of sweats in odd places, can indicate low thyroid. It's not it could indicate other stuff, but irregularities of the sweat, basically.
Mhm.
and feeling depressed, feeling low. So many women would say, I feel low, I feel cold, my energy's drops before my period. And I'd be like, how's the bowel? Bit slower. That's the thyroid beginning to show us that it's a bit low in its energy. And why am I?
Mhm.
Because, like I said, when I started in 1996, graduated in 2000. The thyroid was not mentioned. I can honestly say it's not there in my notes. And when I began practice, I started to learn more and more about the thyroid and the adrenal glands. And they are related. The thyroid, the hypothalamus, which is in our brain, and the adrenal, they all talk to each other, or they should talk to each other. And they are often having a bit of an irregular conversation at the moment. So the things that affect the thyroid are fluoride. So we do have it in the water in some parts of the world, and we do have it in our toothpaste. And there are plenty of studies that show the effect of fluoride on the glands. And the thyroid is a gland. It sits in our neck. It's like a butterfly-shaped organ that's in our throat, behind our throat. And it is flanked by parathyroids. So two on each side usually. Some people have 5 parathyroids, but we have 4, these tiny, tiny little glands that are sort of attached to the thyroid, made of the same tissue, but do different stuff. Important point, because they're not really talked about enough, and they should be. But the thyroid is affected, as they are the parathyroids, by fluoride, by what I call waveform radiation. So 3G, 4G, 5G, EMR, Earth's magnetic radiation itself has raised hugely in the last century. I mean, like massively. I don't know if that's to hand. But we are exposed to more radiation than ever, and it does affect the thyroid. The first thing they did when Chernobyl went off in Russia was they lined all the children up in Poland and gave them iodine, because iodine helps to absorb radiation, so that the thyroid didn't absorb the radiation and get damaged. So radiation affects the thyroid. And the other thing that more recently we found, so this is, haven't even talked about emotions that affect the thyroid. We'll do that.
Yes, because I've seen also that, because all this that's been going on in the world can't be any good for anything to do with our emotions, let alone on a physical level. And people are always now saying, I've got a thyroid issue, I've got a thyroid issue.
And also, right now, people are tired. People are tired and exhausted and cancelled.
Yes.
I mean, I challenge almost anybody listening to say, has a friend blown you out this week, and said, I'm just too tired and exhausted, whatever time, we're talking about in this is what's going on at the moment, So the other thing that affects the thyroid, so we've got fluoride, we've got radiation, is something called glyphosate. And many people will talk about the relationship of gluten and the thyroid. So gluten is in their bread. And for a long time, people have thought that the gluten is affecting the thyroid, and people with thyroid issues shouldn't eat gluten. And that's true. But the problem with the gluten is that the flour, before it's harvested, is sprayed with something called glyphosate.
And even organic, Caroline?
No. So we must go organic.
Yeah, because I have organic bread.
Yeah.
I did have spelt bread, but I found that was organic, because apparently spelt is the only sort of grain that hasn't been modified. Even though they say that it's organic, wheat is organic, somewhere along the line it has been altered in some way.
Yeah, it's been hybridized and grown, and grown to, we forget that our food is not always grown for its nutritional value. Our food might be grown because they want to produce a sweeter flavor. So often women who are doing workshops with me, I'll say, go for, and this is, to anyone who's got wonky hormones, is go for the small dark berries. So anything from cherries, raspberries, blackcurrants, blackberries, blueberries, loganberries, all these types of cloudberries, these little berries are really useful in terms of their antioxidant value. They're very potent for the health of this kidney, adrenal, gonads, and ovaries area of the body. So go for, your blueberries on your breakfast rather than fruits like in the West, bananas, oranges, and grapes are grown for their they're not grown for their nutritional value. So go for these lovely blueberries. And I had a client come recently, and he's for his age, he is actually his PSA. This is his in relation to his prostate. The prostate is enlarged and his PSA levels are raised, but it's actually in line with his age, and that's okay. But the great thing that I heard, and I don't hear this often, is his consultant said to him, eat as many blue and black foods as you can. And what he means is, go for the purple sprouting broccoli, go for the purple, the cavolo nero, go for the blue and the black and the dark red berries, because they will nourish that area of your body. I thought it was brilliant. I was just like, hallelujah.
Yeah, someone's actually said something that is in line nutritionally. But what about supplements, Caroline, that you can take? Because the worrying thing that you said actually was that we don't get enough of our minerals. How can we replenish that in a supplement way?
Yeah, good question. The other thing, just one more thing, if there's any men out there listening, I'm just looking out the window. There's the most beautiful rainbow. Oh, how fabulous!
Oh, that's very beautiful.
I see the black sky, and I was like, and now I see the rainbow. Oh, I love seeing rainbows, don't you?
How beautiful. Oh, they're one of my favorite things, actually, I have to say.
Oh, magical. After we finish talking, I'm going to send you a picture of, it's taken from the window of, it's a place called Ewig Lodge in the Hebrides, and it looks west from there. And whenever I stay there, I kind of insist really on staying on the west side because what happens in the morning is you just see the most incredible colours across the sands outside the window. And,
please send it to me later.
Exactly. Next stop, America after that. You're just looking out onto the Atlantic. And one more, there was this rainbow, and it literally danced across the waves. And I'm just like, oh my God. Anyway, beautiful rainbow. One thing I was going to say for men.
Beautiful. However bad you're feeling in a moment or whatever's going on in life, when you see a rainbow, for me, that's like, like Noah's Ark type of thing. That's my sign from heaven, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, me too. Too. So the other thing for men with prostate issues, if there's any listening, that this consultant recommended was to eat tomatoes. And there is, I believe it's an Italian study about the number of tomatoes and possibly even the type of tomato that you should eat. Yeah, really interesting. To come back to supplements.
Yes.
And I favour supplements over, and I favour superfoods over supplements, because a lot of supplements on the market have an awful lot of fillers and binders in them, which we are finding if people have taken, and especially if they're sensitive and they've taken a lot of supplements, their body is struggling with breaking down things like magnesium stearate, so there's good and bad magnesiums, and other fillers and binders and that hold it together. So if you open a supplement and you are slightly repelled by the smell, you might want to check in with what some of the fillers and binders are. And my own story about that was my homeopath said at some point, go and get some chromium. So I got some chromium from Boots. I think it was a sort of 3 for 2 offer over the counter. I thought, oh, great, chromium. And for about 2 weeks, I was feeling nauseous in the morning. Now, I was still at a point in my life where I could have been pregnant. So I was like, oh, I hope I'm not pregnant. It's a bit late in life.
As you do.
Yeah. Oh, really? Anyway, it sounds a bit gross, but I went into work early one morning, 8 o'clock, sat down and I burped, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's the chromium tablets. And it was a coating on these tablets. They looked like Smarties. I don't know what they were made out of, but I couldn't digest what was holding the tablets together. And this is true of a lot of people. And a little tip, and it is something I'm going to say, it's certainly going on in the UK, is if you are on a medication, and I particularly see this with thyroxine, with HRT, you're on a regular medication and you've been fine on it for ages and ages and ages, and the doctor gives you a new brand and you are not fine, it will be not the dosage, but it will be the fillers and binders. So go back to your doctor and say, look, I'm really not getting on with this version of it. Can you get me the other one? And I'm finding people upset, in all sorts of ways, because their medication is being compounded. It's called being made in a different way or with different fillers and binders, and it's no longer suiting them. So do you get that checked?
That's very good advice, actually, because when you have a look at the ingredients of things, and you can take things for years, and all of a sudden I can feel sick as an old rooster. And I think, because I check all the labels, because, I've got so many allergies, and I think, what's that? And I look, and it's something completely different. They've added, for example, sorbitol in it. I just think, why do that? And then something that you've used for years, it just becomes an absolute no-no.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I had and this can happen with natural brands as well, so it's always read the label.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I had a really nice skincare. It was an organic skincare. This is another tip, actually, that a lot of people don't know. If a food this is in the UK, so you need to check if you're listening from somewhere else, but if a food is labelled organic, it is organic. If a beauty product or skincare product is labelled organic, it may not be totally organic. It can have as little as 1% organic ingredient and still be labelled organic. Not many people know that, but it's worth knowing. So if you want to go truly organic with your skincare, really ask the manufacturer for the details. But I just was using a lovely cream, absolutely gorgeous face cream, and then the next pot I just got a rash, and I'm quite sensitive as well with skin stuff. As I said, I had this terrible rash from chemicals that probably other people didn't get. And I just went back to them and said, have you changed the ingredients? And it was only something like they'd got something enzymatic in it that just didn't suit me, and I couldn't use it anymore. So we do need to listen to what our body's telling us.
Oh, absolutely. And our body runs, better than a Swiss clock. It absolutely knows what is wrong with it. I mean, because I've got so many allergies, and you know how it is, Caroline, even if you smell something, the body reacts. So I can smell something and I will know that's not going to agree with me, because it makes you feel sick. There's something just, and I think that's what we need to do more of, which is actually be more in tune with our bodies.
Yes. Yeah. And listening, and it's with just to come back to that question about supplements and superfoods.
Yes. Yeah.
As time goes on, I am more and more engaged in superfoods, and I'm more and more engaged in finding out where those superfoods come from and what they're made from. So one of the companies that I go to for superfoods has, and we're coming back to the grain here again. I could talk more about glyphosate actually, and I might do in a bit, but we'll see. But one of their grains is or one of their products is wheatgrass. Now, wheatgrass doesn't have the grain in, so it's not a gluten product. It's it's the shoot of the grass. But the seed that it's grown from is like an heirloom seed. It sort of came out of the Egyptian tombs or something. It's like a really old seed, and that spelt flour that you talked about is closer to the original grain, which had far more nutrition in it. So we would have eaten bread as a protein staple, and we don't eat bread like that now. Bread is much more of a carbohydrate for us. That means that it turns quickly into sugar. So it's a quick fix food. It fires up the sugar. Great, we've got some energy. And bread, and certainly your spelt bread, would have been a much more nutritious, would have had more protein going on in it and more minerals going on in it. Now, minerals are depleted from everything, but something like grain has been grown to produce something else, so our loaves that we have now are completely different, which brings me on to another thing, actually. So magnesium is great. Get some magnesium into your life, the Epsom salts. You can also get a little spray, which is a magnesium spray oil.
I've got that.
Great.
But
Brilliant.
do you know what I'm doing with it? I don't even know if I'm supposed to be doing that. I spray it into my mouth.
Ooh.
It tastes very unusual, I have to say.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying for people to do this. That's another thing I have to say. But it does actually make me feel better.
That's amazing. I don't know enough about it to know if you can use it orally, or you should be using it, or how much of it, or etc. So that's really interesting and definitely something to explore. If someone wants to use magnesium orally, and they really they don't have a bath, and they find that spray is a little tingly, so they do have eczema or something like that, and they can't use that spray on their skin, because you shouldn't use it on a broken skin, then I will say go and get usually a powdered magnesium, and you make up a lovely drink before bedtime, and they're okay. You still might want to read the label, but a powder can be good before bedtime. But what that kind of conversation about the spelt brings me on to is eating fermented foods. So increasing fermented foods in our diet is all the rage. It used to be,
for example, because there's so many things out there, because I know you and I have had this conversation about gut health.
Yes.
And I am such a believer, and I'm even more of a believer now, of how it could really affect you.
Yes.
And not having the correct bacteria in your gut can lead to all sorts of issues. Tell us a little bit about that, Caroline.
Yeah, so when I do talks and workshops, I often talk about what I call the toxic timeline. So the 20th into the 21st century toxic timeline. And in the 1930s, we invented fridges. So we didn't have to ferment food. We didn't have to can food. We didn't have to pickle food. We didn't have to sugar food or salt food in order to preserve it. We hung it in the fridge and it would keep for a certain period of time. And certain foods became more available to us, particularly after sort of well after the Second World War. But, we had the diversity from the 1970s onwards in supermarkets, an increasing diversity. So we can grab whatever we want from wherever in the world, pop it in the fridge, and we don't have to think about fermented foods, which are a way of preserving and extending the life of the food that we have. And they're also, when we eat fermented foods, what is fermented becomes more bioavailable to us. So to me, it's the ultimate biohack. Is fermented foods, and to get back into fermented foods and to understand why we've fallen out of this conversation with them. And the other thing is, if we're fermenting vegetables, is we're closer to the soil. We are creating a conversation with the tiny, microbes and etc., in the soil that we need a relationship with, because they help us develop a good gut flora. Many things help us develop a good gut flora. The other thing that happened in the 1930s was we finally invented antibiotics. Prior to that, we'd been using things like mercury and arsenic to suppress sexually transmitted diseases, particularly. That's the big bane of our life when it comes to kind of history. And you know, antibiotics don't really work very well with something like tuberculosis, for instance, which was very prevalent in the 19th century. But antibiotics were invented in the 1930s and began to be used. And we didn't really realize at the time that it was great. They killed bugs, but they also killed off the healthy flora inside of us. And what happens when the healthy flora gets killed off is other types of flora. If you can believe it, the studies on this are only just coming out some, nearly 100 years later. We're beginning to understand what we call the microbiome, when we virtually eradicated it through all sorts of methods.
Yeah.
But basically, if someone has a long history of antibiotic use, they will need to rebuild their gut flora. And the gut flora are hugely diverse. We have thousands and thousands of different types of gut flora. They have different functions for us. And if you're feeling low and grumpy and moody, it might be that you don't produce enough serotonin, a kind of happy, well-being brain chemical. And you might need to tweak your gut flora. And then you have the precursors to producing this brain chemical. If you can't sleep at night and you don't have enough melatonin that helps you slip into deep sleep, it might be that you need to address your gut flora so that you have the right precursors to creating the melatonin. So the healthier the gut, the healthier the brain. And I can't stress that enough. So I encourage people to delve into things like kefir, kombucha. There's water kefir and milk kefir. Yogurt is okay, but it's not enough. Go organic. It doesn't have to be dairy. Things like apple cider vinegar, miso, and non-dairy. Even things like, things that we know and love, tea, coffee, wine, beer, chocolate, are all made through a process of fermentation. So we might want to go back to much better quality wine, and go to a natural wine, an organic beer. If we're going to have these things in our life, I'm not saying go out and cane beer in order to rebuild your gut flora. Yes. All in balance, all in balance. But, it goes back to fridges and antibiotics. It also goes back to, and I'm sorry, I'm going to mention the dear man Freud, who told us at the beginning of the 20th century to look at our navel and blame ourselves, when actually a lot of our mental health is because we've eradicated the gut flora. So our mental well-being isn't just getting out into nature, but it's also nurturing, from the inside. We are what we eat. Is one thing. And another thing that I love is, I'll ask you if you've heard this term. Have you heard the term JERF? JERF?
No. What's that?
Just eat real food.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so cute.
Yes. That sounds like an imaginary friend, JERF.
JERF. Did we just change the topic? Did you have one? Did you have an imaginary friend?
Well, I might have done.
Yeah. I knew it. You're exactly the sort of person. That's why I like you. I knew it.
Well, the thing is, I wanted, when I was really young, well, that's a whole nother story about the unicorns, but I mean, are you into unicorns?
Yeah, like they're just trendy. You know.
Well, I mean, people say to me, well, they don't exist. And I'm like, what do you mean they don't exist? And it's like when I had these stories when I was younger, and also stories that I have now with you, for example, it's like, well, of course they exist. And well, where do they live then? You know what people, when they start to question you about these things, and I said, well, I can't tell you that. And they said, well, that's because they don't exist. And I said, no, it's not because they don't exist, because they'd become extinct if everyone knew where the unicorns live, but it is that sort of wonderment, isn't it, Caroline, of nature
Yeah.
of things that are not everything, is seen with the eyes. It's seen with the eyes of the heart. This is the thing. And I totally agree with you about this gut thing, as I call it, the gut thing, because I was saying to you, I took some of those. Oh my goodness. I have to say to the listeners, so I'm one of these people who have taken probiotics, and I really actually do believe in them. And there's something that I have found very useful and do find useful in my life. But you know how it is in life. You try different things. And I tried a particular brand of a certain type of probiotic. And I have to say to you, it was actually, Caroline, it did affect me mentally, because I thought, what's going on here? I feel really rough like an old goat. I really did. And I thought, my back hurts more now. Everything. And I remember you saying to me, that a lot of people with backache need a healthy sort of, gut flora and all of this. And I thought, oh my God, everything that she said is coming true. And I had to live through it. But I totally believe in this, that it's like called the second brain, isn't it?
It is. I mean, probably it should be called the first brain.
Oh.
It's really important as we enter the world. The microbiome is important to us. It's part of our birth process, Oh yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it?
But anyway, Jerv, did you forget that for a moment? Hold that thought. Did you have an imaginary friend?
Well, yeah. So did you? Was there a unicorn? Is that what you?
Yeah, basically there was a unicorn. Yes.
Yeah. So I did. I had two, and they were called Booby and Redder, and I.
What were they?
They lived under the table, and then they were under the ironing board when my mum was ironing. And I remember walking down the road. This must have been before my sister arrived, so I think pre 23 months. Really? I remember walking down the road with my mum's hand up there. I'm lifting my arm up, and my other hand down there, holding on to Booby and Redder's hands. And Booby.
What were they?
Booby was black and white and kind of a bit like a penguin, and he was a bit more serious. And then Redder was red, and he was like like those huge big tires at the back of a tractor. The tractor has big tires at the back.
Oh, like a spare type of thing going on at the back.
The big tires at the back are they're kind of like a lion's mane. They've got this. So he was sort of like a lion, but sort of like a rubbery tire off a tractor. Anyway,
right, that's an interesting look.
Yeah, he was the comedy character, and they just were around.
And did they speak to you?
Oh yeah. And I think they took the blame if I got told off for anything. It wasn't my fault. It was Booby and Redder.
That's very handy, actually. Then to have imaginary friends. Yeah. But they exist. You know that, don't you?
They totally existed for me. They were as real as anything else. And I think we lose that capacity. There's a bit. The non-rational. We need a bit more of the non-rational, and I don't mean the irrational like we're living in at the moment, but I think and also meditation and going into those spaces is very interesting, because I think with again immersing in nature and in bird watching, I have experiences where time is definitely non-linear, and actually I just come back to writing the book, as part of the pre-order campaign. I've had the most incredible conversations with people, and I've realized at many points in writing that actually the seeds for this were being sown a long time ago, that you sort of come full circle, and that actually what's happening now was really happening already, and it's really quite incredible. the connectedness that's coming through. And I had a whole week where lots of people just said, oh, so great, love, that's great, you're writing, bird is the word. I have this special relationship with robins, and everyone was talking about robins, and then another week everyone was talking about swans came up because everybody's been on swan watch on Hampstead Heath. We've actually had a pair of swans that have had 7 babies and kept.
Oh,
it's the most incredible story.
I love swans.
You well, one day you must come and see the swans. They are be lovely to see swans together.
Oh, that would be nice. They are they're in love for life, aren't they, swans?
Really?
I think so. Isn't it? That's how the whole thing came about. I might have got this totally wrong, but I think this is how, because they sing only when they die, isn't it? Swans.
I think they have. There's a few birds that have a partner for life. Crows are another bird that
really.
The crows are very interesting. That was another week when I had all these crow stories that came through from clients, and I'd just been reading. You put me on to, first of all, I must thank you for that. And I need to send you a photo because I don't know if I did.
What's that then?
Conference of the Birds.
Did you read it?
Well, I'm reading it. After we last went, I went out and bought the Conference of the Birds.
Mm-hmm.
And I must send you a photo of me reading it.
Oh, please do. Yeah. It's an amazing book, isn't it?
Oh, it's really interesting. And I love that the hoopoe is the king of the birds.
Yes.
Have you ever looked at a picture of a hoopoe? Do you know what they look like?
Well, they are legendary in some instances, aren't they?
They're a real bird, though. They're a real bird. They are, I'll tell you, for me, for the whole of my life, they were legendary. They were at the back of my English bird books. And there would be this picture of the hoopoe, and he has
with his fantastic crown, isn't it?
Exactly. And his crown. And I was like, what would I give to see one of those? And then one day I was my friend's got land in Spain. My dear friend Annie has got land in Spain. And I would wander out of the back of the house on her back doorstep there. You stand there and you cannot see another single habitated dwelling. It's really amazing. So I would go out the back door, down the slope with my binoculars, and I'd walk along the valley. Now, the river is very small in the summer, and there was a broken pipe from I don't know where, but it and I could see some birds in the water. And then I just suddenly froze. I was like, oh my God, there is a hoopoe. I'm actually looking at a hoopoe. And I was so excited, because I'd seen this book. It was legendary. It was legendary. It was in the back of the bird book, and I despaired of ever seeing one because, where would I find one, sort of thing. But no, they do exist. They're lovely. And in the book, the hoopoe is the king of the birds. And he asks all the birds, you told me this, he asks all the birds to say, it's actually a good book in a way for now. It is called The Conference of the Birds, and it is by Farid Ud-Din Attar, and it's a classic book. And he is asking each of the birds what their anxiety is in life about not reaching their sort of spiritual home. Their spiritual goal, their enlightenment, what is their anxiety basically. And each of them replies with something, and they say, oh, hoopoe, I think I won't make the journey because I love my home too much and I don't want to leave it and I'm a bit nervous. And then he replies with a beautiful poem. It's amazing, really.
It is. It's a real something that it is so clever, and it was written such a long time ago, but the actual wisdom behind it is absolutely beautiful. And it was actually the Samor that I was thinking of that is legendary, like the Phoenix as well.
Legendary one, yeah. and they
Yes.
go on the journey to find him. And
Yes.
Pluto, the king of the birds, is their guide. And yeah, it's a beautiful book. But when I was in the bookshop, I picked up that, and then I picked up a couple of other books, and one is Ted Hughes' Crow, and the other one is called Grief is the Thing with Feathers by somebody called Max Porter, and it's a short book, and it's a very dramatic story about a crow and Ted Hughes, and then you read Ted Hughes's crow poems, and they're really quite dark. And then I just had this whole week of people talking to me about crows, and I love the corvids, the crow family, things like jays, and crows and magpies and jackdaws, very, very clever birds, and they a lot of those mate for life, and ravens are in that group as well. So yeah, really, really fascinating being in that process and seeing time as non-linear, and things like, like the imaginary friends. I was like, if as an adult, we just talking about
why is it?
again, aren't we?
Yes, I mean, Caroline, if you think about it, in the olden days, as I would say, but in times gone by, people used to share these stories of the birds and were in touch with nature, and they looked at signs and symbols. For example, if a crow appeared, if this bird appeared, it meant this. If you go back in time, and even some cultures now follow this, really.
Yes.
And we've lost that somehow in the Western world. And I think that's what's needed, is to go back to that somehow.
Yes, so there's the symbolism that we associate with certain birds and creatures, and then there's the messages that birds in particular bring us, because they tell us what's coming. So birds tell us about the winter that's coming, the summer that's coming. They tell us, oh, it's that time of year when you need to sow that seed, because So the other day, me and my friend Angie. Angie Klein and I do yoga retreats together. And, she's got into bird watching as well in the lockdown, and so we went on a walk together early one morning, and we came up Parliament Hill on Hampstead Heath, and there were all these blokes with binoculars on the top of the hill, and I was like, because I'm not really that kind of bird watcher. I immerse in nature because I feel good when I come away. I don't feel like it is part of it, going, oh, I saw 21 different birds today. Definitely that's part of it. But I'm not like, I've got, it's a funny thing. It's a different relationship. There's different types of bird watchers, like there is with anything. And I'm not sort of very male, I think, in the main, but to be a bit of a peak bagger. And I've, got to get up there. So all these blokes standing on top of the heath, with their binoculars trained on the sky, kind of doing something dynamic. And I was like, ooh, and the classic thing, which I always feel a bit nervous as a woman about going up and saying, is you sort of say, what's occurring, what's going on, what's happening. And anyway, what was happening was that, because they started to talk about it, was that the redwings were arriving. And these are a lovely bird that looks like our thrush, but has a little red flash in the wing. And they come from Northern Europe to winter here. So when they arrive, it's time to get your scarves out and your hats and your gloves.
Yes.
Because they only arrive when that cooler weather is coming from the northeast, So there's a lot that we can learn, and I believe that some of our hypervigilance and our over anxious state and our looking into the future is, if we are those people in society, we are like that, we are wired like that, to look out for the rest of us, and that we're the gatekeepers, if you like.
It's true, we are. And where we've lost our way, I believe this for sure, is that we are not living in synergy with all the different beings that are on this planet. Seen and unseen, I have to say, whether it be animals or angels or whatever you want, to be part of in this great tapestry of life. I think if we were more in tune with ourselves, we could be more in tune with everything. And this fear would actually melt away.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, it really grounds and calms me to kind of, it sort of puts my mind in order to be, to see that sequence of birds, you know, to know that someone's done some guerrilla planting near me, and they've planted a lemon verbena, you know, and just walking past that and running my hands over the leaves and going, oh, scent, you know, it's just, ritual is important. It has a place. It's just, I think we might have said this before, it's just when we become over ritualized, you know, over pedantic about the detail, that can also be mental unwellness, you know.
Yeah, it's true, because that's where this whole thing of control occurs, and you know, people want to control. And funnily enough, well, this is a strange thing I've actually just thought of now, but everywhere around, it feels that everyone wants to control us, and yet we can't even control ourselves.
Yes, I mean, that's gaining back control is a long journey. I mean, it might be working on boundaries, you know, working, being able to say yes or no to situations and people in our lives, to say that in a way that is comfortable for us. And I love doing some exercises around that in workshops, actually. And we work with what we would like to have in our lives, and then we look at what we are prepared to negotiate on in order to have that in our life. And that can really help when you've got tricky customers in your life, and someone is in your face, and you talk about, what would I like? You know, I'd like happiness, I'd like kindness, I'd like some breathing space, I'd like laughter with that person. Those are the things I would love with that person. And so how do I negotiate to just get that with that person, and not to get all the trappings of everything else? You know, you and I were talking a little bit about that earlier on, actually. The topic of conversation, you know, and you might have a very, very dear friend who always talks about something which you realize they just come back to, and you're just a sounding board for them to say that. And it's about creating an opportunity. I had a very good friend, actually, and she was going through a difficult time, you know, and I thought, I can't sit here and be therapist to you. This isn't serving me, and it isn't serving you either. And so I for a whole year, I would say, let's go out and do something nice together. And our relationship has totally changed. I never said to her, I'm not going to listen to you, but we went out and had an experience together, and a different depth of our friendship and conversation grew from that experiential time that we had. And it would be, you know, it wouldn't be anything dramatic. We didn't have to do anything phantasmagorical, but we would just go out and do something together and take pleasure in going to an exhibition, or instead of being in that we'll have a meal together situation where I just sort of have to listen, and it just didn't feel right for me or her, because I don't think she went away with anything better. But then after that period of time of experiential space and time together totally changed. I really, really value her friendship, and I'm glad I persevered, you know.
Well, I think that's a good ending to a story in a way, or a beginning, as they say, because a lot of people don't want to change. And this is the important, is that you and your friend, at least there has been a positive growth in the relationship. But I know a lot of people, and as I had a friend also, and all that she wanted to do was to sit at home. She didn't want to go anywhere. She just wanted to sit at home and for me to listen to her stories. And when I would suggest and say, we knew each other for a very long time, actually, since we were children. And I would say to her, well, why don't we do this? Or I don't know, let's go for a walk. Let's do something different. Let's do that. And she would consistently, Caroline, say, I don't want to. I don't want to. And I suddenly felt I felt a loyalty because I'd known her for so long.
Mm.
But at the same time, I thought, actually, you are crushing my spirit because I want to do that. And we could do things together if you wanted to. You know, we could find something that we both enjoyed. But consistently, she said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And in the end, you know, I heard this voice in my heart, and it was very difficult, that said, you must respect yourself enough to walk away, because
Absolutely.
if you don't, she will crush your spirit. And we have to give people the chance and the benefit of the doubt. I absolutely believe that. But I think once you have done that, if you don't give that space to your own spirit, I don't think, as you said earlier, it doesn't serve either of you.
No, exactly. And, you know, I think we are very good, you know, and I've certainly done it at times in my life, with, you say, putting up with something, but ignoring what's really going on, and not growing into who we're meant to be in life, you know, who we feel most comfortable being. Takes time, doesn't it?
It does. It's that eternal journey, Caroline. And I think what we do a lot as human beings, me for sure, I don't know about you, but I put up with a lot for far too long.
Yes.
And that is really disrespecting our soul.
It is. And that's where, you know, the boundary work can be really valuable. Coming back to that, you know, coming back to that little drawing, those notes, exploring that. I mean, it just, I find that so interesting. You know, it's a big part of something I did, and forgive me if we talked about this before, was creative journal writing workshop.
Yes. Yeah.
Good. That, you know, so freeing up that part of you, that allowing, giving yourself permission. You know, these are the things that I think, you know, we are growing into as well, is permission to be who we're meant to be, and allowing ourselves time, space, freedom, you know, to explore who we're meant to be in the world. I think there's so much of, oh, I couldn't do that because of so and so, or because, you know, so the shouldn't, couldn'ts, wouldn'ts conversations, shoulda, coulda, woulda, you know.
Oh yeah, shoulda, woulda, coulda. Yes. That's a good saying, actually.
yeah. I think training ourselves, you know, and it is training. It is a muscle. It is like going down the gym. You know, it's something that it's brain gym, isn't it?
Which is important as well. And you know, one thing that really helped me, have you heard of this? It's like a movement, and it's called Say Yes More.
I have heard it, definitely. And I think, as long as we're clear about what we're saying.
Yes, of course. Yes. I mean, like, I think we're too scared sometimes, and we hesitate. And yes, we have to be cautious in, you know, of course, you know, there's common sense. But I think fear, again, shouldn't hold us back from having new experiences.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a constant mantra to me to say yes to play more in my life, at this stage in my life, because, you know, I work hard and I, you know, and enjoy what I do. But it's a constant reminder to play and just relax. And something I wanted to talk about, just because we brought it up, was cats. My son had this.
Oh yes. Oh, don't. Do you know what? I'm in love with cats all my life.
So cute. And just that time to play with a young creature, and just, it's just great.
What is your favorite? What's your favorite breed
of cat?
Yeah.
Do you know, I don't know enough about them, but one of my clients said to me yesterday, she said, "Oh, I've never sent you a photo of my boys." I said, "No, you haven't. I'd love to see a photo." Anyway, so she sent me a photo, and they've got this fantastic frown. I was like, "Oh, I want one of those."
Are they the flat-nosed cats?
No, they look. She said to me, because I live in a first floor flat. She said to me, uh, "Don't or be careful with British short hairs because they like to be outdoors." And I was like, "Oh, that's a good conversation. If I was to get a cat, it must find out which ones." Really like to be outdoors, because a cat, after all, is meant to be outdoors. But I think if I had a cat at this point in my life, it would be a sort of gnarly old one from the Cat Protection League who just wants a nice home to come to because he's old.
Oh, that would be so lovely if you got a cat.
Yeah,
Have you seen those big? What are those big?
Are you thinking of a Maine Coon?
Yes. Oh my goodness.
I have a friend who has one of those, and
Are they that big?
they are
alive,
enormous, and they've got the most bewitching eyes. They're amazing, and they do this thing. Apparently, they all do it. So Maine is very cold. Cold. It gets cold in the winter. And apparently, they all. And I'd love to know if this is true. So people are writing and say, no, it's not true. But apparently my friend told me, dig into them. She said they all pat the water before they drink it to see if it's frozen or not.
No, don't. That is just the most cutest thing. Oh my God. Have you seen them? Have you seen these well-known ones that are black and they look completely majestic? You have to look at a black Mancoon. Is it a Maine Coon or a Mancoon?
I thought they were always great. I really don't know enough about them.
Have a look. You would love it. They just look like they're from Narnia or somewhere.
Yes. Yeah, there's these really great, we're talking about cats. Again, I'll have to find the picture for you. There's some kind of Nordic forest cat.
Oh, yes. I love them.
Oh, aren't they amazing?
Is it the Norwegian forest cat? Is that what it is?
I think so, yeah.
Oh my God. They don't even look real.
No, now we're back to magical creatures. They're not of this world, honestly.
They're not, are they?
No,
there's something about cats, isn't there? Me and my friend are always talking about cats because whatever we want to cheer ourselves up. So anyway, do you remember that cat when we were at such and such? And it just gets you in a good mood, doesn't it?
You know what? We've actually got a cat cafe around the corner from where I live.
A cat cafe? What's that?
You can go to the cafe and have a cup of tea and stroke cats.
You are joking.
No.
Where is the cat cafe? You must tell the people of the world. Where is the cat cafe?
It started in Japan. I'm fairly sure when I was in Japan, cat cafes. So yeah, look it up and find your local cat cafe. And if there isn't one, start one, I'd say.
Oh, a cat. And whose cats are they?
They belong to the people who run the cafe.
My goodness.
I don't know what's happened in lockdown. I hope they're all still all right. But yes, so the cat cafe is rather cute. I'll just tell this story. So I was writing a little article for Soak and Sleep, who are a bed linen company.
I buy from them.
Oh, do you?
Yes, I do. I have got. Do you know what?
Go on.
I told you, you are an oracle. I have their pillows, and it's the bigger pillows. Are they called Oxford pillows?
Yeah, an Oxford pillowcase is the pillowcase with the little flange around the edge.
Yes, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And it's sort of double the size of a normal pillow. Is that an Oxford?
Bigger, they look much bigger, yeah.
They're Soak and Sleep. They are brilliant.
They are brilliant, aren't they?
Yes.
I tell you what, so the book, The New Hot, that's just out is by Meg Matthews.
Tell us about that. Tell us about this new book.
Just quickly, before I say about that, so somebody, Meg put one of the people who works, runs Soak and Sleep onto me, and she said, would I write this article on sleeping? So for their sort of expert rights on their website kind of thing. So I wrote about sleeping, and I was listening to, I'm going to have to think of his name. He's called, anyway, it's a beautiful piece of music which is designed to send you to sleep. And the guy, I think, is called it's German name. It's Max Gechter or Gerchter. It's something like that. Beautiful piece of music. Anyway, so I was writing this article, and I was at a friend's house at the time. She's got 2 cats, and when I was sitting at the desk and working, the cat would hop up onto the table and walk around every hour. Would walk around in front of my computer just to check. Say, look, you need a screen break, love. So I'd sort of stroke her, and then I'd maybe get stretch my legs, and. Anyway, so I was writing this article, and I was playing this music, and she just came up and lay down in front of me and just fell asleep. So music works for the cats. It's going into the article.
Oh, well, you have to send me the article.
I will. It's not a huge article, but it's just got useful tips for sleep. I was a sort of menopause sleep. So in Meg's book, Meg's book is called The New Hot: Taking on the Menopause with Attitude and Style, and it is fantastic. She talks to women about their real life experiences. She talks to some of her friends. She talks to lots of the top menopause doctors, health practitioners like myself, sports practitioners, etc.
And you've written 2 chapters, Caroline.
And one of the chapters is on sleep. I hate this word actually, but people are starting to use the term sleep hygiene. I'm like
I've never heard of that. What's that?
Well, I don't know. It's like you've got a kind of non-hygienic sleep state as well. I just find it a bit of a weird one. But it's the new term for, how's your sleep hygiene? Means, are you switching off your Wi-Fi? Have you got cool cotton sheets? Are you, maybe if you're a hot menopausal woman, having a nice cool shower before you get into bed or whatever, what's your sleep routine like, really, is the word we should be using. But anyway, so I've written a bit in the book on that, and I've written a chapter in the book on managing menopause naturally, which is my thing, really. I work a lot with women and hormonal health, and just before, so I mentioned fermented foods, magnesium, and the other thing that I would mention for hormonal health for women, and I call these my holy trinity, is essential fatty acids. Women need far more fats and oils.
For example, give us an example for people that can't take, for example, fish oils that are vegans. Yeah. What is the alternative to that?
Yeah, there's some really great cold pressed plant oils. So things like oil of evening primrose, borage oil, or a blend of those types of oil, hemp seed oil, black currant seed oil. There's so many plants that we use the cold pressed seeds for to make an oil combination. So there's some good brands around. But most women need more fats because they help us make hormones. So fats, magnesium, and fermented foods. That's what I call the holy trinity. And in this book, I'm talking about managing menopause naturally, as I say, which is my thing. But really, it's balancing hormones is what we need to talk about. And that goes to some extent for men, as I've shared. Prostate prostate issues are a hormonal imbalance. It's actually not enough testosterone in men, and testosterone levels are dropping. We've got such terrible fertility issues, and that's both men and women. But testosterone levels are, and I haven't got the stats right next to me, but they are so much reduced since the 1950s. So what we consider to be a healthy man when it comes to making babies, the levels are totally different to what they were in the 50s. And unfortunately, I do believe that this issue with the COVID, where the zinc, we get symptoms, the loss of sense of taste and smell, or distortions of smell that I see in my clients with the COVID. It shows us that we are very deficient in zinc. And that this disease, this virus, zaps our zinc levels, and
that's interesting. That's very interesting.
I've been talking about it since March, actually, but basically, the highest location for zinc in the human system is in a man's testes. So if the zinc is that low and it drops even lower, I am concerned for our fertility rates post-COVID. I wouldn't be at all surprised. That's actually a prediction of mine, that, this could be a big issue for us. It's already an issue. And again, I come back to some incredible superfoods that we can use that help increase testosterone, for instance, in that situation, but help balance our hormones in other situations where we may be overactive, overfunctioning, or underfunctioning. We can, and I strongly believe, and I say this, a lot, that we can build on a weak constitution, and we can restore a broken constitution given the right ingredients.
That is very hopeful, Caroline, because sometimes it's really important for people to hear that, myself included, because people sometimes think they're far too broken to ever be mended.
Yes, and it can feel like that. I think I've certainly experienced times in my life when I've felt broken, and I've been extremely grateful for the people and the situations and the therapies that have got me out of that broken space. And it's incredible what we will put up with as humans, and there's a big conversation about that at the moment. Is what are we putting up with? What are we being asked to do? And is it against our will? And when things happen against our will, guess what organs they affect? The kidneys, the adrenals, the ovaries, and the gonads. So this is another aspect of. Oh,
that's interesting, isn't it?
It is, and
because it works on so many levels.
Yeah, and if those organs are depleted enough, then we will start to borrow from the bones. So the end game of fear and anxiety is weakened bones, just crazy. So, I've given some good keys to how you can restore the system. Fats.
Excellent. I've been making notes, of course.
Yeah.
I am, because
and then
do you know what, Caroline? I would love you to do another book and put all of this in a book. It would be so useful in this time.
Yes, it would. This is true.
I know you've got your book, which is coming out early next year.
Yes.
Bird is the word, isn't it?
Yeah. And there are health aspects of that. I mean, there are bits in that where I talk about, because the birds themselves are really interesting. I mean, birds, the way that birds eat, the way that the whole kind of that conversation is amazing, really interesting. Birds change their diet according to what they're about to do. We could learn a lot from that.
That's amazing, really, because look at the trust that the birds have. I think we spoke about this before, but look at the trust that they have. They're not worried about their sustenance. They have this faith that it's going to be there, and it is there.
Yes, yeah.
That's the thing.
And they do have also this, it's good to look at adaptation, and to see the birds that have adapted. I mean, adaptation is such a huge subject. The mammoths didn't survive the last ice age because they couldn't adapt to, from their diet that they were eating, so it's fascinating.
It is. And, they do say, don't they, those that adapt survive.
Yeah, adaptation is key. 100%. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Caroline. This is so fascinating. I was, it's difficult because I was taking notes as you were talking. Absolutely fascinating lady you are, and amazing fountain of knowledge, and what you do is so wonderful for people. And I can honestly say I am honoured to know you.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoy talking to you, and I really appreciate being asked to come and talk, and just share something that hopefully is useful for people.
Oh, definitely. I know that, I'm going to see now when I put the next episode out, what the response is, because this has been an absolutely fascinating episode with so much knowledge that is so key for people out there.
It is. And we've talked about magic. I mean, I see the homeopathy and flower essences as the magic, as the icing on the cake. But we need to address these underlying issues, I think, for an awful lot of people, and that's mostly what I've talked about today, is how to do some things which are restorative for us. And we've touched into that kind of aspect of other things that we do, that make the big transformation for us on an emotional and spiritual level.
And we've got to start somewhere. This is the point. People become overwhelmed. And I know all of us can become overwhelmed. And we say, well, there's so much to do and I don't know if I can do it. But what's the important thing is start small. At least start in a small way and then build from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you can skin brush every day and then follow with that hot then cold shower, fantastic. And then slowly build up, and add in things. And it's definitely, Rome isn't built in a day. I always say that to people. Small changes made over a long period of time have a far greater impact.
Yes. Yeah.
Doing everything all in one go and then abandoning it all next week.
Well, this is not the issue. It's about discipline and consistency, I think. And it doesn't matter even if you walk 3 steps a day, but keep walking is the point.
Yes, definitely.
And not to look out there at all the doom and gloom, because actually there is so much beauty and we forget that we ourselves are such a beautiful creation.
Yes, 100%. I mean, one of the things, lockdown's a very strange kind of space in lots of ways, but I have so appreciated sitting in one space and watching the changing seasons from here. And I've always said, I would like to do that. But as a kind of fast thinking, fast moving Gemini, it's quite difficult for me to do that. And lockdown created that situation where my work was at this desk and I look out and I've literally, this is the first year ever in all the years I've lived here when I have watched the Virginia creeper move from, being green in the summer slowly going red, and I see it changes every day, and that would not normally happen, so it's really important to look at the silver linings.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And to keep believing in the wonderful.
Definitely.
Because the only thing that can overcome the darkness is the light.
Yes.
And we are the light. And really, we are the light. And that's important to be reminded of on a daily basis. I think we need to remind ourselves of that. Thank you so much for coming on, Caroline, really. You are welcome anytime. Anytime. And, keep inspiring the people and keep helping the people because really you are out there as a light to many.
Thank you. That's so lovely. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here with you.
Oh, me too. And from unicorns to your other imaginary friends, I think there's a lot to be said about still there's so much magic in this world.
Definitely.
Oh, thank you so much, Caroline. And please do come again. Look after yourself.
You too.
All right then. Bye.
Mm-hmm.
Bye. Caroline Gaskin. Always an absolute pleasure to hear such valuable advice, really, that is so much needed in this world right now, and especially for us who are looking for ways to improve mind, body, and spirit. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you in the next episode. Until next time, take care and lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.